Well, it's great to be here, and it's great to finally meet Daniel. I've been a big fan of the Tipping Point community for quite some time. We cover a lot of what you do, and we cover a lot of what's happening in the Bay Area philanthropy scene. So I often say that now, right now, is probably the most exciting time ever in philanthropy. There is so much going on. There's a lot of new donors coming to the scene. There's a lot of new strategies that are being used, new approaches. And I often think of the Bay Area as something of a microcosm of all that. And so I just wanted to start off by asking you, from where you sit, like, how do you see the current moment in philanthropy?
Well, we were talking about this before. I'm always excited. I'm always into what's going on. We've been around for 13 years, and in 2005, we were kind of coming out of kind of the bubble bursting here in the Bay Area, and I would say that people were just starting to get back to, you know, the high expectations that now we're accustomed to out here. And then, of course, we hit 2008, and we had this awful crisis. But how the moment right now is, we're talking, it's intense. We have Facebook, we have Google, we have all of this incredible wealth in this in the region. We have all of these companies that have actually come of age over the last 13 years. I mean, we didn't have an iPhone. We didn't have Google dominating like it is. We didn't have Facebook, and yet we're expecting these companies, we're expecting these people to jump into philanthropy in a way that they're really young, and they often think that they have all the answers. And I would say that they're learning. We're at Tipping Point, we're trying to help them grow into it. There was many times where we would be out trying to get people thinking about what's going on in this region. And for those of you that are from out of town, you know, you think about all this great technology, but then you read in the New York Times and the LA Times about our incredible homeless problem. And we have this, you know, we have the dirtiest street in America, according to the New York Times. And we're living in two worlds right now. I mean, without question, and we're trying to figure out a way to bring them together. So it's exciting, but it's also one where we, and I think many of you coming from the foundations that you work at, there's still an education that needs to happen for a lot of these young, emerging philanthropists and leaders of companies.
One way I think of the Bay Area as being a microcosm from covering it through Inside Philanthropy is, you know, we're in the middle of this really intense debate about economic stratification, inequality, lots of attention to this within the world of philanthropy right now. A lot of foundations, from the Ford Foundation downward, kind of re-gearing their strategies to equity. And the Bay Area seems like a kind of poster child for this rising chasm. And there's been a lot of pushback to the tech community, a lot of resentment, anger, that the techies are somehow driving this. And I wonder to what degree that sense of responsibility is bringing new donors to the table. Like, hey, we got to do something here, that this chasm is getting too wide, this city is becoming too much a kind of Dickensian tale of two worlds.
No, it absolutely is. And I think, you know, when we were early on, we would go to these companies that I've mentioned, and they would say, no, we are not doing philanthropy. We're focused on the business. You'd go to young entrepreneurs and they'd say, we're changing the world. We are, you know, why can't you solve poverty like, you know, we solved getting, you know, videos seen 10 billion times in a month? You know, like, why can't it go viral? Why can't you solve these issues? And we had to explain for a long time that, you know, teaching kids how to read and how to do math, how to house people, how to get people living wage jobs it's a fight day in and day out. The groups that you all are supporting, the groups that we're supporting at Tipping Point are in a daily fight to help people. And it is a battle. And to get these companies and these young leaders to understand that in an age where they've seen their companies just explode overnight, seemingly, that was challenging. But what I will say is, over the last few years, we've now seen Google really step up, take on social justice issues. We've seen groups like Facebook understand that, and they were one of the companies that would always just say, no, we're not getting involved. Now they're leading efforts on building more affordable housing. They understand that they cannot continue to grow. Their business is predicated on having people coming to this region, and there's not enough housing. Our transportation is not working. It takes people 2 hours to commute to and from. It's not affordable for their employees who are making $100,000 a year. Forget if you're living in poverty in this region. You're in serious trouble, and I think they're starting to understand it. And they're starting to understand it because the world's attention is not only on their business practices that are sometimes, a little sketchy, and they're also not taking care of their community. And so I think what we've been pushing is a partnership approach with all the businesses here in this region. And if you're going to read the papers over the next couple of days, you're going to see a battle on Prop C, this tax to increase funding for homelessness. And you have business leaders coming out against it, and you have business leaders coming out for it. You have the mayor against it. It is a wild time in this region.
I want to come back to that homelessness issue in a moment, but first, you mentioned these techies. They often think that they have all the answers. They've invented some app or some software, and they think, wow, how hard can it be to deal with an issue like poverty, right? Yeah. And I wonder, one of the big roles that the Tipping Point plays is kind of educating, bringing donors into the world of philanthropy, getting them to understand how things work. How hard is that? And how ready are these people to learn? And what do you do to get them to understand how nonprofits operate and how the social sector works?
Right. Well, to step back for 1 sec, I'll give you a little primer on Tipping Point, because I got to plug Tipping Point for a second, which is, and what we always say at Tipping Point is that we've stood on the shoulders of what you all and what your organizations and your foundations have done. I was part of am still part of a family foundation, the Mimi and Peter Haas Fund. I've been on the board since I was in high school. So I understand what good philanthropy looks like. I also think that we can, and this is why we started Tipping Point, I think we can do it in a more community-oriented way. You don't have to be a family that's made $100 million or $1 billion. You can be part of this community and give $25,000 a year or $50,000 a year or $100 a year. And so what I learned, and I learned it from Robinhood, and I learned it from seeing different I think, best practices, which is that we provide general operating support to our organizations. We think that is the lifeblood of these organizations. Only 20-25% of us in this room give general operating support. That, I don't think, is okay. I think we all need to be going in deeper with our organizations and with the leaders of our organizations and helping them build the capacity of their organizations. So we provide general operating support. We also know there's no silver bullet in tackling this issue. So when we're talking to these leaders and emerging philanthropists, we're telling them, listen, you can focus on one area. We like to say we're focused on 4: housing, education, employment, and early childhood development. Those are our 4 areas. And we think if you're going to tackle poverty in a region, there's no one silver bullet, right? Obviously, education, I think most of us probably agree that is the fundamental building block. It's 40-50% of our grant making, but then housing and employment are critical to that. And now we're emerging our funding around early childhood as well. So we try to tell them, listen, you have to focus, you have to pick a region, and if you're a Bay Area company or you're living here and you're raising kids here, you have to think about your own backyard, because guess what? There are not people in New York and there are not people in Florida or Texas thinking about poverty in East Palo Alto or in Oakland. They're not going to give. Only you here in this region are going to give back to your hometown. So we're trying to, teach them that. And I am optimistic.
But many people still don't give, with a lot of money, who live in an area with intense economic stratification, homeless people on the street, kids who can't read by third grade. Why aren't they doing more?
Well, that's a longer conversation. Listen, what my philosophy and ours at Tipping Point is, we're going to educate people as much as we can. We have 30 events during the course of a year. We try to hit them with what we call Tipping Point Talks. We're going to have one in November where it's just going to be focused on homelessness. We have a trivia night next week where we're trying to get that next generation, in a fun environment where they can learn about Tipping Point. We have our big event typically in May, where last year we raised $15 million in one night. We hit them in different ways, right? And if they're not on board, then we have to move to the next person. Right. And I would say what we've seen a lot of out here, a lot of high expectations of people giving back. And I think once people start having kids, they have a family, they're not working, they're not in their 20s and 30s and just head down at a computer screen all day, I think we see them starting to understand that they want to be good role models for their kids. If they haven't wanted to be good role models for their employees, sometimes having your own kids puts you over the top.
Yeah. So let's get just a little more into the nuts and bolts of how Tipping Point operates, your key principles. I recently did a big piece on venture philanthropy, looking at the sort of rise of venture philanthropy over the past 20 years, and just struck by how different some of these newer outfits are than many legacy foundations. And you mentioned unrestricted support. General support is one of your key principles. Tell me about some of the others and how you see your methodology as distinct from what a lot of private foundations do.
Well, first, if I can push back on you, I do not love the term venture philanthropy. I think, and I have a bias against it, because when we started in 2005, it was, I'm a venture philanthropist and I'm going to do philanthropy just like I did my funding of startups, which was give money. If they don't succeed, just walk away really quickly. What we've always said is that we're an engaged grant maker. It's not a sexy title, I know, but it is how we believe in the work, which is that you do a lot of due diligence up front. You find strong leadership. That's principle number one. Clean financials, number two. Have to have your books clean and have to be willing to stay on top of that, because I think that's the fundamental building block to any business or any nonprofit. If you can't keep your financial house in order, you're not going to be able to serve your clients as well as I think you could. And then tapping into the best of the business world and providing all of the resources that our groups may need, just like any for-profit business needs: great lawyers, great accountants, great consultants, great software. So we advocate for our groups. We get the McKinseys of the world, Gibson Dunn, Latham Watkins, great law firms, to come in and support our groups with anything and everything that they may need. So general operating support, strong leadership, clean financials, and a willingness to engage with us. We want our groups to call us when things are not going well. We don't just want to hear the good news. We want to hear what is not working so we can help them fix it. We're not in this, we all in this room have the power of the purse. We all have the money, right? That tends to lead to bad outcomes in the sense that the groups are going to want to please us. They're going to want to say what they think we want to hear. And that's not our work. Our work is to support these groups so that they help their clients do better, become more effective, become more efficient at serving their group, the people on the ground. I said earlier, this is really hard work. And we have to understand that, and we have to be there to support them in good times and in bad times. So those are some of our philosophies, in the sense that we are here to serve the groups that we're funding. They are not here to serve us. They are here to serve their clients, and we in turn are here to serve them.
I'm interested in this management assistance piece, which is a really big part of your approach. What are the challenges of making that work? You know, when you bring a McKinsey consultant to some small nonprofit in San Francisco, how does that play out?
It's a great question, and it's gone sideways a number of times. We have a impact group. It's essentially our partnerships group, led by this woman, Kelly Bathgate. And Kelly's been with us for 7 years now. We handhold both sides. You know, if we have a McKinsey consultant coming in or a BCG consultant coming in, we say, listen, this is what the group needs, and then we pair them up and we stay on top of it. I think what we have to get our for-profit partners to understand is that the nonprofits are running their own type of business. They are just as important as, you know, their Fortune 500 client. And typically, we pay. We don't pay full freight, but we try to pay so that the firm has some skin in the game. So there's a lot of hand-holding. There's a lot of relationship building. And I think what we've come to understand, and we understood this pretty early on, at all of these companies that provide services, there's a war for talent. They want to retain their employees. They see Tipping Point as an organization that can help them help their employees have good work experiences. So someone that is at, you know, a marketing firm is working on Coca-Cola, you know, they're selling sugar water, right? Well, if they can do that, and they can round that out with help with a housing group or with a charter school organization, and they can feel really good about that work, it actually helps them retain employees. So that's kind of a little secret part of the work as well. But we need to make it a good experience for the for-profit and make it a very helpful experience for the nonprofit. And we hold both groups accountable.
One term we hear a lot about in this world of venture philanthropy, and I take your discomfort with the term, is the idea of scale. That what a lot of these small nonprofits need to do is they need to build a greater capacity to have more impact, and that yes, they need those systems to be functioning, but they also need better communications, they need more money, they need to do a lot, they need board development. First of all, what do you think of the idea of scale, and how important is getting bigger to have more impact versus, say, having a stronger ecosystem of more smaller groups?
It's a great question.
And then, what is the biggest challenge? Is it the money, or is it a mindset?
So we're a regional funder. We focus, you know, we have a third of our groups down in the Peninsula and South Bay, down to San Jose, a third in the East Bay, Oakland, Alameda County, and a third or so here in San Francisco, with a couple across the Golden Gate and Marin. There's going to be groups that are place-based, that are great for the mission, that are great for the Canal District in San Rafael, that they're never going to scale beyond their neighborhood, and we are committed to those type of organizations. If we're looking to get behind an education group that is thinking about going from 2 or 3 schools to 30 or 40, we'll also do that. So I think there's got to be, right from the beginning, and this is part of the due diligence, like, what are we looking for when we fund this group? If we're looking for scale, and this group has no plans on doing it, does not have the mindset, to your point, it's probably not going to be a good fit. If we know that we need to help low-income families in the Mission District, we're going to Martha Ryan at the Homeless Prenatal Program, and we're going to stay with her like we have for 13 and a half years. She was one of our first grants in 2005. She's still in our portfolio today. And by the way, our our model is that everything we raise goes out the door. We have no endowment. And so every year we make a 1-year gift that's renewable for as long as we're working well with an organization. For those groups to scale, if they have the mindset, it's typically that it's the money, right? And also what happens is they get a big infusion of money, and it's one-time money, or it's 3-year money, and they get it, and they scale, and then that funder goes away. So once again, to all you funders, stay with the group for longer than 3 years. Just because in the business world, if you're invested right now, let's say you've been owning Amazon stock or Apple stock for the last 5 years, you're not like, I'm gonna sell it now. You might want to sell some because they're going to the moon right now, but you think Amazon's still going to be pretty prolific over the next 5-10 years. You're going to stay with that company. You're going to invest in it. Why not do the same thing for a nonprofit that is doing really good, strong work and has the potential to grow? The reason many foundations don't is because they have a 3-year and you're done mandate, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's where our sector, I don't understand it. We throw out all, individuals have made so much money in the business world, and then they get to the philanthropic world, and then they change their mindset of how they invest. They think, I'm going to go for the hot, sexy thing for a year or two, and then I'm going to turn my attention to this one. You got to stay focused. Foster youth in 2005 was not a hot topic. 2009, 2010, it became a hot topic, and one of our groups, First Place for Youth, was doing amazing work. We started giving them some more money, and then, by the way, it fell off the front page of the newspaper. We're still funding them,
right.
But a lot of funders move away because it's not
right.
front page news. So usually the ability to scale in the nonprofit sector, if you have the mindset, if you have the leadership in place, it's that the long-term money isn't there.
One interesting thing about Tipping Point is its role as an intermediary between these major or not so major individual donors on the one hand, this new emerging donor community and the social sector. But you also presumably have quite a bit of interaction with institutional funders, legacy foundations, and I wonder how those pieces fit together, how you work with the institutional funders. And by the way, what do you think of them?
Yeah.
What do you think of the?
Right? So
that's why I'm asking.
I mean, I said this before. We at Tipping Point and me personally feel like we're standing on the shoulders of the giants that came before us, and we in San Francisco have an incredible tradition of philanthropy. We have a number of families that have, been there for the last 50 to 100 years. In San Francisco specifically, and so, they led the way. I mean, if you're looking at this beautiful view, and if you're from out of town, and Crissy Field, I mean, built by a lot of families that we all know here in San Francisco. So, tons of respect for the foundation world that came before. I think we need to keep iterating, keep getting smarter. We have a great relationship with Fred Blackwell at the San Francisco Community Foundation. We have, done some partnering on grant making with the Marin Community Foundation. Emerson Collective down in the Peninsula is a partner of ours. Our program teams get together and talk. So we're trying to partner with the community foundations, some of the newer philanthropists that we, respect tremendously. No foundation is going to be able to do any of this work on its own, so we need to do a better job of partnering. We all, and I am the worst offender of this, we all talk about partnering all the time, and then we never do it. And we get back to our offices, and we kind of just get our work done. We need to do a better job as a funder group of collaborating. We've seen some really good examples. The Social Innovation Fund that President Obama did, we partner with the Edna McConnell Clark Foundation on that, and a few other, the Duke Foundation and a group in Omaha as well. So I thought the SIF, the Social Innovation Fund, actually helped a number of funders collaborate in a unique way, and we need more of that.
So one more question about the funders who were already on the scene, have been on the scene. If you had a kind of overriding critique or piece of advice or one thing that you would like the world of institutional philanthropy to do differently, what would it be?
I would say general operating support and stay with the groups. Don't have a 3-year and you're out plan or a 5-year out or one, whatever it is. Fund what's working, and double down on what's working, and then the hardest thing for all of us is you got to cut what's not working. You have to end funding for groups that are not performing. You have to hold groups accountable. I mean, we are, and I've not talked about this today, but we are a data-driven organization. You can be over the top and do too much and ask of too much of your organizations, but with all the software that we're talking about today that is available to not only funders, but to our groups, it is easier to track client outcomes. It is easier. Now, you should invest in that. You should help your groups pay for that. Don't say, go track it and then don't help them fund it. And we do that. Our impact team that I was talking about, our partnerships team, has a 3-person data analytics team, and we are helping our groups measure their outcomes and what's happening with their clients. So general operating support, and stay with the groups and think about them as that you're serving them, not the other way around.
So because time is short and we got to wrap up here, I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about your big signature project campaign around homelessness. This is a $100 million 5-year effort, the most ambitious thing that you all have done, from what I gather, and of course, the top issue on everybody's mind in this city. Tell us how it came together, how's it playing out, what have some of the challenges been?
So for the first 10 years of Tipping Point, we're currently funding 42 organizations in those 4 issue areas that I talked about. And we had never done policy. We had never really leveraged government dollars, and we all know that's where the money is. No matter how much money we all have at our foundations, government has the vast majority of the dollars that are going to help with the outcomes that we're all seeking. And so I was pushed by the board over and over again, like, what are we doing on education policy? What are we doing on employment? All you need to do, you're not going to see it out in the Presidio, but we have a homeless crisis in this region, not just San Francisco, but throughout the region. On any given night, there's 7,500 people sleeping on the streets of San Francisco. It is absolutely, I believe it's a moral imperative that we take care of our neighbors, and we have not been doing that. And so we committed, after 6 months of really focusing on what we should do about this issue, we said we were going to go raise $100 million. We're going to try to reduce the number of chronically homeless individuals on our streets by half over 5 years. Of the 7,500, 2,100 are chronically homeless, which means they've been out on the street for more than a year and have a disabling condition, usually a substance abuse or alcohol dependency or co-occurring disabilities. So, 3-pronged approach prevents. The first is create more housing. Not just building housing, but there are units that are available. We are not using all of the Section 8 vouchers that are available to us. Our housing authority is not moving as quickly as they know that they should be. There are units available, even in as high a real estate market as we have, or rental market as we have, there are units available. So how do we get people who have been living in permanent supportive housing, where they get support services, how do we get them out, if they are able to, into market rate housing using those Section 8 vouchers? So we've actually moved 150 people out and into their own units where they can for the most part take care of themselves now. Previously, the only way you were getting out of that permanent supportive housing is you were dying out of it because no one could afford the rent. So we're moving people out. We're going to do a prototype. We're going to build a building in partnership with the San Francisco Housing Accelerator Fund, and we're going to try to build a building in 3 years and at $385,000 a unit. currently, that sounds crazy, right? But right now it takes 5 to 7 years and costs us $600,000 to $700,000 to build per unit. So we're going to create more units. We need to prevent people from falling into homelessness, mental health, foster youth, the criminal justice system, so real systems change work. And then we're going to try to optimize the public sector. That's the third prong. We have 2 staffers that we're paying for, tipping point fellows inside the Department of Housing, of Homelessness and Supportive Housing in City Hall, and also helping them create a one system, one database that they used to have 14 different databases tracking homeless. We're trying to get it down to 1, and so that's an area. So we're going all in on a partnership with the city. It's hard work. It is much easier just writing a check to a great nonprofit. Partnering with the city and county of San Francisco, really difficult, but it needs to be done, and we're committed to it. Otherwise, we're not going to see the change that we all need.
And public-private partnerships are another very interesting thing that's happening in the field of philanthropy right now, and this is a great example. Well, I just want to thank you for this great conversation.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you,
interesting to
guys.
hear about the tipping point. Great to be here with all of you.